Welcome to the Functional and Integrative Medicine Podcast. This podcast is all about exploring root cause medicine, showcasing the power of this approach, and inspiring other MDs and DOs to follow this incredible path. I'm your host, Ginger Allen, and founder of Your Medical Liaison, a medical marketing agency working with MDs and DOs since 2012. My passion for root cause medicine and physician advocacy drives me to help MDs and DOs who have incorporated functional and integrative medicine into their practices. So let's dive in. Welcome to the podcast. Today I'm excited to introduce Dr. Evan Hirsch, also known as EnergyMD. He is a world-renowned fatigue expert, best-selling author, and professional speaker who's helped thousands recover from chronic fatigue syndrome and long COVID through his clinically proven EnergyMD method. After graduating from the University of Toledo School of Medicine and completing his family medicine residency at the University of Washington, Dr. Hirsch's journey became personal when his wife and later he himself developed chronic fatigue. Frustrated by the lack of answers in conventional and even functional medicine, he set out to uncover the true root causes. His deep research led to the discovery of the toxic five: heavy metals, chemicals, molds, infections, and nervous system dysfunction, all of which he now targets in his transformative four-step recovery process. Through his online program, podcast, and best-selling books, Fix Your Fatigue, Dr. Hirsch is on a mission to help reverse 1 million cases of fatigue worldwide. And when he's not in the clinic, you'll find him singing musicals, dancing hip hop, and traveling with his family. Let's dive into his story and the powerful insights he has for reclaiming your energy and your life. Please welcome Dr. Evan Hirsch to the show. Hi, Doc.
Hey, Ginger, thanks so much for having me on.
We're excited to have you. Your story was really, really inspiring. I know we're going to hopefully get to share a little bit about that. So we got your bio there, but can you give us a little bit more background on what led you to the world of functional and integrative medicine?
Yeah, I mean, I was already practicing functional medicine when I came out of residency. I got board certified in holistic medicine when I was in residency through the American Board of Holistic Medicine. I went to my first holistic medical conference when I was in medical school. I had done a clinical hypnotherapy, so I was already kind of interested in it. I learned about integrative medicine from Jonathan Wright and Alan Gaby. And I met my wife in 2004 when I started my family medicine residency. And she got chronic fatigue soon after we got together and was, 80% better, I would say, after 3 years. But then I graduated residency. We had a child. I started my own practice in functional medicine, family medicine, functional medicine. And then a couple years after that, I got chronic fatigue syndrome and it just about destroyed my relationships, my business. I felt a lot of shame because I was practicing functional medicine and I couldn't help myself. And so I had to go on a journey of figuring out what are these causes that I'm missing. And that became the toxic five for me. So I had to go into environmental medicine. And then I had to plug up the holes in my education in order to figure out what was going on with me. And then that became my mission to help the world.
I love that. And I have heard of environmental medicine, and that's where you study. Is that where you study the molds and stuff?
Correct. Yeah. So for
Okay.
me, it was molds, heavy metals, chemicals, infections like Lyme. These were all things that I never wanted to have to deal with. And when you have a functional medicine practice, you can get, I don't know, probably 90% of people better who walk in the door. But for the other 10% who've got chronic fatigue syndrome or who have autoimmune diseases and stuff like that, if you want complete resolution, what I found is that you really have to go to the next level, which is a lot of it is environmental medicine, but I also had to plug some holes that I also didn't learn in environmental medicine.
I love this. You remind me a lot of another physician that I work with that specializes in autoimmune disease. So you became a functional medicine doctor, but you really became a specialist in the functional medicine world, treating chronic fatigue and long haul. How do they say it? Long haul COVID?
Or just long COVID or post-acute
Long COVID.
sequelae to SARS-CoV-2. Yeah.
So yeah, so you're like an actual specialist in this department, which is so cool. And yes, you're right. These certain diseases, especially the ones you mentioned, you really need that extra level, that higher level of deep diving into your education, and that's really cool that you did that.
And can I just comment, like
Please.
as a marketing expert, like Like when you niche down, like the more you can niche down, the more you can take the entire field, right? And so from a functional medicine perspective and environmental, I can really help a lot of people with chronic fatigue syndrome and I'm uniquely positioned now for long COVID because the causes are all the same, except there's the spike protein too. So it allows me to get very clear with my messaging. When people are Googling, they're Googling like, chronic fatigue syndrome, functional medicine doctor who can help me, right? They're not Googling like, I don't know, something broad, right?
Mm,
So
right.
so that just kind of fit in with the kind of work that like what happened to me and my family. And from a business perspective, it just made a lot of sense where I can really niche down, get very good at something and help so many people.
I love that. Yeah, I do try to tell my docs that I work with, don't try to be all things to all people because it's really hard to market that. We are a little bit still in the world that functional medicine is still new enough that if you are, especially in some of the rural areas, if you are a functional medicine doctor, we can still get some traffic to you that way.
Mhm.
Um, but it's also, I call it shiny object syndrome. You don't need that next course. You don't need there's a million different, as you know, avenues you can go in this functional and integrative space. And, physicians by nature love to learn, but they can also just, find themselves like stuck in this never ending cycle of always feeling like they got to take that next course. And I tell them, stop. You got this. You know what you want to do. You know who you want to treat. And I'm not saying you can't take continuing ed on those subjects, but yeah, focusing. I love the focus. And from a marketing perspective, niching is the number one way to grow your practice. So the more you niche, the better it is. Okay, very cool. And then obviously you already kind of shared that, this approach you used on your wife and yourself. So you were like your own case studies, if you will. Can you share a story, not about you or your wife, but about a patient that came to you and whose life you significantly improved using this approach? Obviously, I know you've helped thousands, but give me one that stands out.
Absolutely. So let's take somebody, we'll call her Suzanne. She's a 50-year-old woman who I guess we'll do a long COVID case. So she got COVID in 2020, and 6 months later, she still wasn't better. She had fatigue, brain fog. She's able to function, but she's not bedbound, but she's having a hard time working. She's concerned about losing her job. Her relationships are compromised. She's just tired, brain fog, body pain, etc. And so consequently, she comes to see me. And what I found is that everybody who has long COVID not only has the microclots and the spike protein, but the reason why they got it is because they had the other toxic five that didn't allow the immune system to get rid of the infection when she got it in the first place. And so that's the
Mm,
heavy metals, the chemicals, the molds, the infections, the nervous system dysfunction that builds up in the body over time. We're just like accumulating these things. The stats showed that over 300 different chemicals are found in baby's cord blood. So we know that we already come out of the womb behind the eight ball. We're FOS. We're full of stuff, right? And we just accumulate those things throughout our lives. I mean, that was basically my story. Um, and so consequently, she had all of these toxins and infections. And so we just kind of went through the process. I've got a 4-step process that I take people through where we're figuring out the causes that they have. There's over 30 different causes, and everybody that I work with has about 20 of those causes. And so we figure out their causes, then we replace the deficiencies that they have, open up the pathways, the exit pathways in the body to prepare for getting rid of the toxic five in step 4. So we took her through this process. It took 12 months. There were ups and downs. I prioritized my time in helping people navigate day to day. So I do a lot less one-on-ones now, and instead I'm supporting people on the everyday so that they can ask me questions. I can provide them responses in guaranteed 2 business days, and they pivot so that they can keep making progress. So essentially, somebody's going to pivot about 30 times or so in the course of 12 months. And so, if I can provide them with a protocol initially of what I think they're going to be needing in the next 12 months, then I prioritize my time with that pivoting on the day to day. So essentially, she worked through the process. She had some ups and downs. But eventually, in month 9, really when the magic happens, when we remove a significant amount of the toxic five, all of a sudden the mitochondria comes back online, hormones come back online. She started getting more significant energy. Instead of 7 bad days per week, she's now having, she goes then to 6 bad days per week, 1 good day. And then that just keeps improving over the next couple of months. And then she's at 12 months. Her energy went from a 5 out of 10 when she started with me to an 8 out of 10. She still has some toxins left. And so she's going to proceed with, another 6 months. But at that point, she should be able to do everything that she wants to do in her life. So right now, she has much less brain fog, or I should say at 12 months, she had much less brain fog. Body pain was near gone. Her energy improved significantly. Her sleep, which was bad, improved significantly. So I've just found that working on the toxic five really makes such a big difference in these people's lives.
That is so cool. Now you're a little bit of an outlier because when did you finish your residency? How many years ago was that?
2007.
Okay, so you've been practicing medicine for a while. So back in 2007, when you were taking all the holistic courses and stuff like that, you were kind of ahead of the curve, because nobody was doing it too much back then. And what's really cool is now you're an outlier again. And what I'd like to talk about is you are not practicing a traditional medical practice anymore. You've actually pivoted to become a health coach. Is that what it is?
That's correct. So
So
in
tell me about this.
2018, yeah, so 6 years ago, so at some point, I think it was 2017. So I wrote my book in 2017. In 2016, I went to my first like business mastermind, and I met some chiropractors there who were talking about how they were operating online as health coaches, because the challenge is that you're restricted by your license, right? The state says that you can only practice in the state in which you're licensed. So unfortunately, you're not able to help people across state lines. And so I wanted to help people across state lines. I wanted to work from home. I wanted to be able to travel. And I was looking at my practice over time and learned, okay, like what do I want to get rid of in my practice that's stressing me out? And so initially it was hospital, doing rounds in the hospital on my own patients. I had my own practice right out of residency, and so I got rid of hospital work. And then I got rid of primary care work, and I was just doing functional medicine. And then I slowly over time got rid of insurances. And then I went online. And so this was kind of like an evolution over, I don't know, 5 years or so, where finally I was like, I want to go online. I've seen chiropractors do this. I spoke with some lawyers, and I became like the virtual MD. And so that was going to suit my life a lot better. I learned enough, done a lot of mindset work, studied a lot of business to kind of understand like what was possible. And
Right.
so that's I wanted to build my business around my life, and now I'm working from home. My wife works from home. My daughter obviously comes home earlier than I normally would if I was working a 9 to 5 job. I meet with my daughter every single morning from 8 to 9, and every afternoon from 4 to 5 to check in on schoolwork, to help her with whatever. She's 16 years old, 16 and a half. We were doing driving. Now she's driving on her own. She wants to go to school in Europe. And so my wife and I are going to go join her when she
Oh,
graduates
cool.
college. We're going to have an adventure. We just got our German passports. So there's a
You
lot
can
of
do all that now.
opportunity. I can do all that now.
That
Yeah,
is so
exactly.
cool.
Yeah, my business isn't going to take a hit. I mean, I'm going to have to change my hours or whatever, but
Right.
I have this vision, and I can set things up where I can help a lot of people around the world, and I can do it in a way that feels good to me.
And are you doing that? Are you still doing one-on-one health coaching? Are you doing group coaching now? What's kind of the business model?
Yeah, so I've evolved. I'm evolving out of the one-on-ones, and so now it's more along the lines of they've got one-on-ones with my health coach. There's group components, so there's live Q&A with me 3 times a month. There is an online community that's like a Facebook group, but not on Facebook, where I guarantee a response in 2 business days. When people, I thought about like, what do people really need from me? And they need an initial plan. And so when they come on, they fill out an intake form. I provide them with an initial plan in a Google sheet that gives them the plan over the next 12 months.
Okay.
And then whenever they and I tell them exactly how to implement it. And then whenever they hit a bump along the road, they reach out, they ask for help. I provide that feedback, they pivot, and they keep moving forward. And so it's kind of like where do I really need my attention, and how can I fit that into my lifestyle so that I can do interviews like this, or I can spend my time doing other things that I don't have to do all the one-on-ones. So
I love that.
that's how it's structured right now.
I love that. And just to clarify, which I'm sure this is true, is that obviously that 12-month plan is specific to that patient based on their extensive labs, which I'm assuming with the five toxics things that you're dealing with, your labs are even more extensive than a traditional functional medicine doctor.
Not anymore. So the fact that I've
Oh,
been doing this for a decade, what I found is that everybody that I work with who's got chronic fatigue syndrome has all 5 of the toxic 5. So
okay.
I actually don't really test so much anymore. There's a couple tests I'll have people come in with, but at this point, I know based off their symptoms 90% of all of their causes, and I'm looking at these 30 different causes, and I know that I'm going to be successful as if I don't miss these causes. So I've been fooled by functional medicine labs before. Like, looks like somebody doesn't have mycotoxins in their urine, and then 6 months later we repeat the test, and it's a waterfall of mycotoxins coming out.
Okay.
So I've been fooled enough times, and I understand it to be that oftentimes these are the toxic 4, not the nervous system dysfunction or the trauma, but the toxic 4 are really bound up in what I call a toxic matrix, where when you start to pull out one thing, like let's say Lyme disease, all of a sudden because it's bound up to heavy metals, chemicals, and molds, those start releasing as well. When you open up the exit pathways, you're going to start releasing a lot of these toxins out of the tissues. So I just address all of it because I also want to make sure that this is the last program people ever need. I know that I'm going to get 95% of all of the potential causes by addressing the toxic 5. It's not going to cost people any more or take any more time because actually we're not waiting for laboratory tests to come back. We're not getting incorrect laboratory tests. So I've just so that yes, there is some personalization, but we address the toxic 5 in everybody. We address adrenal and mitochondrial dysfunction, which play a role in fatigue. But and there are some nuance, then there's thyroid and B12 and vitamin D and lifestyle habits, which we can individualize. But the individualization really comes from, okay, here's your initial plan,
Hmm.
and then the tweaks along the way, the pivoting, so that how do we get you to potentially full doses on all these tinctures or supplements that we're recommending to get all the toxins out of the body.
And for other doctors listening, this is the beauty of being a specialist because you know the symptoms. And so you don't even need labs. I mean, these people
Right.
have probably been through, and I know with my other doctors, sometimes they've been through 7 to 9 doctors already, and they produce labs for every one of them, and they're still
Right.
sick.
Yeah.
So I love that. That's so cool. So I'm sure adopting this new approach has brought challenges. I mean, you make it sound really easy now, but let's share with some of the doctors some of the challenges that you've run into over the years and how to navigate those. Because there's a lot of doctors probably that are going to be listening and saying, man, I would love that to be able to be home with my kid and go to Germany and do all the things that you're doing. But what challenges it wasn't all roses, I'm sure, to get to where you are.
Oh, the challenges. Yeah, no, there's definitely been challenges along the way. Unfortunately, I've joined some good business masterminds that have kind of helped with that. But when I made my transition, I didn't do it exactly as smoothly as could be, and I had $200,000 in debt. Which I paid off in 12 months, thankfully.
Good for you.
Yeah, but that was the first transition. Also, being online is very different than hanging a shingle. Like it's different when you have a brick and mortar, and so there's a lot of mistrust online. I also had to become an expert in the 5 departments of my business: operations and financial and marketing and sales, and there's one more that I'm forgetting right now. But so I had to,
Well, then you have to be a doctor too. You don't forget. You have
delivery.
to
Thank you.
right, you
Yes,
have to
exactly.
deliver the service.
Exactly. So, spent lots of time and money on these different aspects of the business to be able to understand, how they fit in. And so need to understand how to do the marketing side of things and then how to do the sales. I'm conducting my own sales calls. Right now we're running Facebook ads. I joined a new mastermind because I didn't have enough consistent leads. It was kind of feast and famine. One month would be amazing and the next month really wouldn't be much. And so, I joined a mastermind that I'm really appreciating, which ROI'd in the first couple of months, which means it paid itself back. And
Great.
so, a lot of it is kind of like running your own business, and you have to be okay with that. I have an operations manager who is in the Dominican Republic, and then she's hired a couple of other people who are in Colombia and Chile and India. And so those are all people who kind of support the business and allow us to do what we need to do. And I would love to hire people locally, but there's no way I could run my business, with everything that I would have to pay locally, and I could pay people a really good wage who are outside of the U.S. So yeah, it's
I
been
do the same thing. So yes, it's cost prohibitive. As much as I'd love to support, everyone on the team being US based, it's just cost prohibitive. So I get to have people all over the world, and they're great. And you know what? We're a global economy now, and the smile that we bring on the people's faces, especially like in third world countries like the Philippines and India, who this is life changing for them. Having these types of positions doesn't just put food on the table; it actually allows them to get a real home and actually like get a refrigerator and things that we take for granted in this country, right?
yeah.
So, what do you wish someone had told you when you first started practicing this way? Like if you had another friend that was a physician that, "Hey, Evan, you wish they'd have told you."
I think it's clarity, and I think it's mindset. Mindset really is like the biggest thing. Like you have to be able to, like, if you need to have a vision for your life. You need to figure out what's going to make you happy. I mean, I'm still working on all these things, but I think mindset was the biggest thing, and then also just going for it. Like you have to take the next step, and you can't course correct from standing still. And you have to make the investment in the business and in your mindset. And I have learned that the more money that I invest in business masterminds, business trainings, and my mindset, the faster I get to my goal.
Me too. I joined a mastermind for marketing about a year ago almost, and it's been one of the best decisions I ever made. And it's a big investment every month, but I really feel like because I follow the program and I listen to what they say and I ask for feedback. It really helps to catapult your business to the next levels. I love that you shared that. What advice would you give to other MDs, DOs specifically now, thinking about adopting functional integrative medicine into their practices? What advice would you give them about that?
Yeah, I think niching is really great. I think that doing
Now
the I think
remember, these guys
right.
haven't even considered or might have not even taken a class in functional medicine, right? So I think niching comes after you've kind of learned the basics, or am I wrong? Can you go right into niche, or do you kind of need to have the fundamentals of functional and integrative first? You tell us.
Well, I think that it's potentially easier if you start focusing on one thing. Like, what would be a functional medicine perspective of thyroid, hypothyroidism, Hashimoto's? Like, that's going to be like if you start with like one disease and say, I mean, it depends on kind of like what you're already currently doing. If you find
Okay.
that there's certain people, I guess there's different ways to approach this, but I would say, if you are going to, I mean, I started broad on my functional medicine training. I started broad on my family medicine training because I kind of like wanted to have all of that information, and I swore I was never going to niche down, and it was scary to do, but as we kind of talked about, it can really help your business. But I guess I would start with getting clear about what you're looking for, creating a plan and having an idea, like trajectory of like where you want to go and what do you want to do. Do you want to do what I did and then kind of like take that map and move in that direction? Do you want to do like what some other people have done that Ginger has interviewed on this channel? Like just get a sense of what feels really good in your body, what sounds really good, and then just kind of copy what successful people have done.
No
Successfully,
need to reinvent the wheel.
yeah.
I love that. And
So,
I will add too, for me, I always tell, my clients, who do you love working with? Do you love working with kids? Do you love working with women? Do you love working with the elderly? Do you love working with men? And what disease, these diseases are you trying to cure? What are you, or prevent or reverse? What are you passionate about? And yeah, that's a really cool advice that you had there. I like that. Think of your niche first and then work it backwards. That's really actually a really smart way to look at it. Love it. All right. So a couple of last questions here for you. So what trends in functional and integrative medicine are you most excited about? I know you're also doing environmental medicine, but it's always evolving and changing. What's like on the horizon right now that you're super excited about?
I think it's the nervous system dysfunction. A lot of people think about it. I mean, it's getting more and more popular in the functional medicine and alternative world. And we're talking about trauma, really significant abuse, but then we're also talking about little t trauma or anything that changed the way that you look at the world, that made you feel like it was an unsafe place, which was really my story, rejection of a peer group a couple of times. If you're raised by imperfect parents or imperfect humans called parents, and you're surrounded by imperfect humans called siblings or peers, you're going to end up with trauma. To some
Hmm.
degree, and you have to work on, people have to work on their mindset, but that's been really significant. And then also the nervous system dysfunction that results from the other toxic four. So those toxins and infections will also cause nervous system dysfunction. So I'm just finding that people are getting better so much faster when they're doing the nervous system retraining work. So that's kind of
Love
exciting.
that.
And then peptides, I'm really interested in the peptides and the bioregulators. I just had somebody on my podcast who was kind of talking about that, and that's really interesting. But it's really the mental, emotional health that I feel like I'm seeing the biggest jumps in understanding and acceptance. And those are the things that I'm also at in the point of my life where I'm starting to incorporate a number of things that are making me healthier and happier and improving my relationships and my business and all this sort of stuff that I'm also then incorporating into my client journey to help them
Very
get
cool.
better, faster, and happier.
That's amazing. And it's called nervous system. Say it again.
Well, there's nervous system retraining. So
Retraining. Nervous
yeah,
system
so
retraining. Okay.
Gupta program or Primal Trust or DNRS with Annie Hopper. Those are kind of some of the big ones that are out there right now.
Cool. I'll
The
check
first
those
two are
out.
kind of like my favorites, but yeah, they can make a big difference.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much for taking the time to be on the podcast today. You have an amazing story, and I just love what you're doing. And like I said, you're an outlier. You've been one your whole life, and you're just continuing to blaze the trail for others. So you inspire me, and I'm sure you can inspire other doctors as well. And what is the best way to reach you? Whether it be a physician that's just like, hey, Evan, I got a couple quick questions, or even a patient that might get see this and want more information. What's the best way to reach you?
So you can go to my website at energymdmethod.com. And for if you're interested in working with us, you can click on the masterclass, watch the masterclass, and get on a free call with me to see if I can help you and if we're a good fit to work together. Or if you're a physician and you want to just chat, you can text me through the website. In the bottom right hand corner, there's a little bubble. Just click on that, and I see all those texts that come through, and we can have a conversation.
Awesome. Thanks so much again for being on the show. Have a great day.
For having me on.